My name is Ruadhán Cooke. I'm a university teacher in French at the National University of Ireland, Galway. I teach modules in French civilization language to predominantly students doing a double honours degree in French and business. Broadly speaking, my research interests are in the area of French culture and society, but more specifically I have a particular interest in the literature of sport, sports journalism, and most specifically a corpus of writing by a right-wing novelist of the 1950s, Antoine Blondin, on the Tour de France. I gave a paper previously looking at the French connection with Connacht rugby since the advent of the professional game, and for this particular meeting or discussion I looked at Connacht rugby's fight for survival in the professional era. The professional game in Connacht was facing the threat of extinction in the early 2000s, and in the winter of 2002, the spring of 2003, the rugby fraternity and wider society in Connacht mobilised itself around a campaign to press for a commitment by the Irish Rugby Football Union to maintain its four professional entities. I suppose what was unprecedented about this was that Connacht, as a playing province, would have been traditionally and historically the weakest of the four. That order of things carried over into the professional era, and Connacht rugby wouldn't have had a very big support base. There would be quite a tight, small rugby fraternity in various pockets across the province, mainly centred on Galway, but with a number of important outposts. But the interesting thing about this movement in the context of protest was how quickly the group mobilised, how well it mobilised, the extent to which it brought in political clout, serious political clout, and the extent to which it generated a broad coalition of support right across the province. And I suppose Connacht typically would have had feelings of being the underdog, the marginalised, and I suppose a sense of opposition to the capital and more prosperous parts of the country. In the heat of the hunt, the Connacht Friends of Connacht Rugby and the campaign to save Connacht Rugby, it succeeded because the IRFU backed down. And the IRFU very, very infrequently in the past have backed down, but in faced with this huge backlash against the plans to wind down Connacht as a professional entity, they relented. Connacht Rugby survived. The Irish Rugby Football Union committed to funding 4 professional teams for the 2003-2004 season, and that has remained the case to this day. When I was speaking on the morning of the conference itself, I tried to focus my attention on the newspaper articles in a very tight and a very narrow 3-week window from when a leak to the press presented Connacht being wound up as a fait accompli. That was on the 9th of January, and the IRFU published a statement saying that they were going to fund Connacht out into the foreseeable future on the 31st of January. So I tried to look at particularly the language used in the newspaper coverage, and I attempted as well to have a look at the narrative, the type of language that was being used in the media, on the radio, by people who were interviewed, on placards, on messages of support. And that was essentially what I tried to bring to the 2-day discussion. And I was conscious as well of the fact that what I was talking about, albeit not from the perspective of a specialist, was, I suppose, a case study in how somebody like myself, who at the time was sort of a supporter from the outside looking in, how I as an individual committed myself to becoming a fan. And I think that that's probably the story of what's happened in the intervening 12 years, is that Connacht Rugby has created an identity for itself. It's worked on its brand, it's worked on reaching out to creating a following and to making contact with people and community.